Now, I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Robert Springer, Vendor and Supplier Diversity Manager. As the Vendor and Supplier Diversity Manager, Robert works to grow relationships with diverse-owned businesses with the intent to expand the BPDA's Equitable Procurement Program. This involves identifying diverse supplier networks, including them in procurement solicitations, and conducting compliance monitoring to ensure the agency's objectives are met. Before joining the BPDA, Robert worked in real estate development and finance for private, nonprofit, and public entities. He has a master's in public policy from the John F. Kennedy School of Government and a BA in political science from Columbia University. Welcome, Robert. And Chief Procurement Officer. Michelle leads the finance department, which includes accounting, financial services, procurement, grants management, and more. She has been a public servant since 2011 when she started with the City of Boston's Office of Budget Management. Since then, Michelle has championed reforms in titled policy with data-rich reporting practicing. Michelle attended the University of Connecticut and holds a master's in political science and a master's in public administration. In her spare time, Michelle is an instructor with Bay State Skating School, where she helps children learn to ice skate, which is perfect for this time of year. It should also be noted that the BPDA was the 2023 winner of the Pacesetters Partnership of the Year Award for their partnership in contracting with Casablanca Landscaping. Thank you both for joining us today, and I will pass it over to Michelle.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining. As you heard, I'm Michelle Goldberg. I'm joined today by Robert Springer, and we are really excited to share with you all of the various ways that you can do business with the BPDA. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview. We're going to just lightly touch on who we are and what we do at the BPDA. We will talk about our procurement opportunities. I'll then let Robert share our work in technical assistance. We've included a ton of resources. We're not necessarily going to dive in deep on every slide, but knowing that these will go out at the end, we wanted to load up as much information as possible. And then we can do some quick Q&A. Next slide, please. And so now let's go in to talk about BPDA and our procurement. Next slide, please. So our mission is to plan and guide the city through inclusive growth. We try to create opportunities for every neighborhood and every sector. So we help plan the future. We focus on physical, social, and economic change. We are trying to create a more prosperous, resilient, and vibrant city. In order to do that, we have to buy things. We are separate from the city right now, but as some of you may know, we're working very closely with the existing mayor to integrate even further into the city. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of the property that we own, most folks know our regulatory arm, but we own a lot of property, primarily sites that were previously owned by the US military. And once they were decommissioned, our agency took over responsibility and has been promoting economic development in these spaces. Next slide, please. In order to do that, we have procurements in public works, software, of course, consulting and design and engineering, traditional goods and services, vertical construction, all of these come together, and we spend roughly $18 million a year in public procurement. Next slide, please. So here's just a more comprehensive list of the traditional categories that we purchase from. So as we go through and look for diverse suppliers, these are traditionally the categories that we check. So for those of you that hold certification, it's very important that you pay attention to the categories that you're listed in, because these are the categories we're active in. Next slide, please. If you're interested in some of our most upcoming opportunities in the very near future, we've got a list here of what's out to bid right now and what's coming through the pipeline. But next slide, please. If you go to our website, you would be able to access all of our existing proposals as well as any of our past proposals. I would really encourage small minority-owned firms to take a look at some of our older proposals and use that for study guides, right? To get a sense of how our projects have evolved over time. So we keep these available to the public. Next slide, please. We also maintain a buying plan. And so once I'm done with these slides, I will hand over the presentation because that is a big part of Robert's work. We, on a quarterly basis, make available online our buying plan. It takes a 24-month look out into the future and tries to guess, at least by category and general dollar amount, what we think we will be buying. Over the next 24 months, we've got a lot of work in the pipeline, over $89 million worth of work. So these two links would be able to take you to that website. Next slide, please. And so, Robert, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about how our buying plan is organized and what folks might be able to find there.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So as this slide shows, there's approximately just under $90 million in opportunities available on our buying plan website. So as Michelle had noted, if you go to bostonplans.org and click on that link there for the RFPs, you'll be able to see current and past procurement opportunities. The buying plan would be a forward-looking site. That's a separate link as well. And you're able to go there. You're able to sort by your particular trade. If you're an architect, you can go by architecture. If you're a property management firm, you can go and sort there and find the opportunities that are relevant to you in advance. One of the reasons why it's important to do things in advance is, one is, most folks would know, there's a certain benefit to incumbency. So the folks who currently have contracts, they're in a position to win them. However, by making this information public, by making sure that smaller businesses know about it in advance, that increases the likelihood that people like you, participants in this call, will be able to respond. And as Michelle had noted, the past RFPs and past invitations for bid are good guides for what would be required. So if you go back and look at those tools, you'd be able to see, okay, what was a winning bid? Who ended up winning this contract? So you can take that information and prepare a more successful proposal. So next slide. So, and also I've known in most of these presentations, there have been some questions about BPDA land dispositions. So the BPDA works with development teams on private property and on BPDA land. So the BPDA owns property throughout the city of Boston. Some of it's in the Charlestown Navy Yard, Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park, and there are other sites throughout the city. However, when those parcels have been identified for development, they go through an RFP process. So that's a process where if you're a developer, an investor, architect, or design consultant, that would be an opportunity for you to go and look at those opportunities. So you would go to the same bostonplans.org, click on the link there for the RFPs, and that will allow you to see what's currently available in terms of real estate development opportunities. And at the end of this presentation, we'd have a contact for folks who are interested in land dispositions. That would be Rebecca Hansen, the Director of Real Estate Development. So next slide. Technical assistance. Next slide. So one of the things that we're excited to announce is we are actually launching a site where we have gone out and we've, through a Living Cities grant, compiled a list of technical assistance providers, and we are making that available to the public. Because one of the things that we had found in terms of working with a consultant was some of the biggest barriers for smaller businesses, it would be understanding what's required from the RFP process, and also navigating the process of dealing with the government. So if you go to this site, the Airtable link, you would be able to sort by business type and particular opportunities. So if you're interested in putting together a business plan, if you're a new business, you'll be able to find resources there. If you're a more established business, you're also able to find resources there. So, and as we noted at the bottom of this slide, we will be preparing webinars to help walk folks through the public procurement process. Next slide. So this is just an example of what the site would look like when you go to that link, the Airtable, and click on it. So you're able to see the technical assistance providers, the service types, the barriers that they're intended to help, i.e. certification, capital and financing, the business age, whether it's targeting a new business or a startup. And then there's just essentially a description of the technical service provider. So we, as I said, we're launching this. We're excited. We now have a new vendor resources page on our website. So any feedback on this technical assistance tool would definitely be appreciated. So any comments, feedback, please feel free to reach out to myself or Halsey Hughes and let us know how things could be tweaked or improved. So next slide. Resources. Next slide. So these are some of the links. So again, it's going through the BPDA procurement page, the technical assistance resources, and there's also a technical assistance manual that you can reference. So again, taking this step back. So the buying plan is the forward-looking, the future-looking procurement opportunities. The equitable procurement plan is a document that our board had authorized going back in 2021 to make sure that we are not actually exceeding the state requirements in terms of being conscious about reaching out to smaller and disadvantaged businesses. The procurement portal link is the link that I directed you to before. Also directing you to links through the city of Boston for additional technical assistance. And also I'd want to let you know about the Boston Local Development Corporation, which we'd have a slide towards the back. We describe that as one of the best kept secrets in the city of Boston. So if you're a Boston-based business or you're planning on relocating to Boston, BLDC provides financing. So if that's an area that you're interested in or you need some assistance, please reach out to the team there. And finally, in terms of the link, that would be the BPDA's procurement mailing list. If you want to be, we send out responses whenever we send out emails whenever there's a procurement opportunity. If you would like to be added to that list, please let us know. Go to that Airtable link and process, sign up. We'll let you know about the opportunities. Also, if there's any opportunity for us to work with you and going through the certification process, that's something that we'd be more than glad to do. So next slide. This is a list of key contacts, and that's the folks at the BPDA and the Boston Local Development Corporation, BLDC, that I've referenced before. Next slide. So suggestions to potential vendors. Those are the links to the buying plan. We've already mentioned that, but in terms of folks who are responding to procurement opportunities, so if you've made the decision to go to our site, there's an opportunity that would appeal to you and you're responding to it, we'd say, please review documents in their entirety, pay attention to the form for bidder qualifications. That's usually a time-intensive document. So if don't wait to the last minute to do things. Also, in terms of collect and prepare all required documents in advance, because in terms of public procurement, deadlines are incredibly rigid. If something is due at noon, it needs to be in before noon. If you send it at 12:01, you may have spent weeks putting something together, but it can't be reviewed. So the time, that's a real component. So also, I'd suggest participating in any Q&A periods or any bidder conferences or site tours when they come up during a procurement process. That's the way to ask questions. And it's also just saying, look, no one's perfect in terms of maybe there's an important detail that we omitted when putting together a scope of work. That feedback helps us put together a better product, ultimately. So ultimately, the point there, next bullet is submitting responses well before the deadline to avoid disqualification. And finally, if you've submitted a package and you weren't selected, you have the option to request a bidder's debrief. That's incredibly invaluable information because we would be able to let you know if you ask where your proposals fell short, and that would allow you to improve them. So next go round, hopefully your firm is the one winning a contract. So next slide. Importance of getting your business certified. So if you're a business that would be eligible to get certified, either as disadvantaged business, minority women-owned business, I'd say certification allows potential clients to find your firm. While the BPDA doesn't have specific MB hiring targets, there are companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield and partners that are often looking for diverse businesses to provide goods and services. So if you get certified, that's one way of folks being able to find your business easier. Also, the city of Boston has a sheltered markets program. That's a specific program. One of the things I think last year is the minorities, there was snow plowing that was available and other businesses. So based on certain criteria, also based on historic trends, i.e. that's how the sheltered market program was evolved. And bigger picture, so the city of Boston offers certifications for businesses. So if you aren't certified, there are two types of certifications you could get. You could either choose to go through the city of Boston, or you can go through the Commonwealth, the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office. Both programs are reciprocal, as I understand it. So if you register with the city of Boston, then ultimately your business will show up on the Commonwealth's website. In terms of experiences, I'm agnostic about either one. So the biggest thing is just getting certified. So next slide. As I mentioned, the BLDC is one of the best kept secrets. They offer loans up to $250,000 to help Boston-based businesses grow. So you have to be physically within the city of Boston. You can't be Boston adjacent. So Dedham or Everett does not count. But if you are planning on moving your business into Boston, that would count. So as this slide says, the BLDC had provided over 20 million in small business loans while leveraging over 95 million through collaborations with Boston's banking community. And these loans have helped create or retain over 3,500 jobs in the city of Boston. Next slide. And that would conclude our presentation. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to any questions you may have.
Robert and Michelle, first and foremost, thank you again for joining us today and presenting. As we wait to see if we have any questions coming in through the chat, and to anyone listening, please feel free to throw any questions you might have in the chat box. I have a few questions myself, if you don't mind to kick us off. Awesome. So first part is you guys both, or you mentioned the buying plan, right? That 12-month look forward about what you believe is going to be procured upcoming, and that's a great way for new businesses who are diverse or smaller to kind of get ahead and plan. What are other ways that you guys can, or you do support small and diverse businesses to be competitive?
Thanks. So some of the, I guess, internal procurement processes that we've put in place, I'll speak to, and then Robert, maybe you can talk to our outreach and engagement efforts. We started with the basics of trying to simplify the documents, moving anything that was a contractual requirement out of the bidding process. So one of the examples I like to point to is for vertical construction, you need sponsor verification. So that's where you go up to the state and you say, yes, I participate in union workforce and I sponsor apprentices. And it's just, It's a policy requirement, and you have to pay $18 to get the form from the state. And so we said, gee, that creates a pay to play, and I only need it if we're actually entering into agreement. So we moved that to a contractual requirement. So we tried to reduce the burden to just get in and compete. We always leave our advertisements advertised for longer than 14 days. We frequently heard from providers, gee, if you put it up and you're only advertising for 14 days, I assume that you're just doing it because you have to and you're not actually interested in my bid. And so our response to that is we want to give everybody ample time, not just the incumbent. And so we traditionally try to advertise for at least 4 weeks, if not 6 weeks. So those are some of the key kind of technical changes that we've made. We cut checks on a weekly basis to try to make sure that cash flow runs quick, because we know that that's another really important feature for small businesses, is the pay cycle. So we've really kind of squeezed our internal tools, minimized insurance requirements wherever possible, those types of things. Robert, can you talk a little bit about our outreach and our intent around technical assistance?
Yeah, in terms of the outreach for every major, I'd say major procurement over $50,000, we reach out to certified businesses to let them know about opportunities. That's a huge thing because, you know, we're sending emails, so it'd be at this point, that's mainly a colleague, Halsey Hughes, who would be sending out the emails. It's reaching out to businesses. It's being a live human being who's there. So if folks have questions about the process, they're able to reach someone. So we are essentially casting a net. We want to make sure that folks know about opportunities to contract with us. So we're doing that outreach. And as Michelle had said, opportunities are held open generally longer than they're required to be by statute to make sure that people know about these opportunities. We're doing that kind of stuff. So in terms of the technical assistance, one, that's our effort in terms of working with businesses who may not have done business with us before. Or if you're a startup to, you know, there's maybe a little cliche, but it's we want to work with you to get your business to be contract ready. So you're putting together a proposal that can be successful. And one of the things I would say about public procurement, the importance of it would be if you're able to navigate that process, if you're able to do business with an entity like the BPDA, that means you're then able to do business with the city of Boston, any municipality across this state, and actually the state. So if you're able to get to a point where you're able to get work that way, you would be in a much stronger position. Also, one of the things would be, again, a little cliche, but during recessionary times, public sector contracts are how many smaller businesses are able to keep the lights on and, you know, be in a situation where they don't have to lay folks off. That public procurement, one, yeah, it's meeting the need that the agency has, but at the same time, there's also a benefit to the businesses and the community that we serve. So,
I guess
Uh,
I'd circle
ahead,
back
Michelle.
and just highlight one tip too, because I see some of the questions coming in the chat. The bidder conferences that we do, so typically, we really encourage our staff to host some kind of open meeting, whether it's about an RFP or a bid. It's really great, even if you're not sure that you're qualified for the job or that you can cover the whole thing. Go and see who else is there. That's a really great way for subcontractors to connect with primes to see who else is interested in the project. So even if you think that you don't directly fit into some of the categories that we've listed, or you're not 100% sure that you can completely do this job, still come and hear about the work and see the other firms that are interested. You might be able to connect and provide subcontracting support to the project. So I think the biggest challenge is investing the time to kind of suss through when it might not be directly useful this moment. It's not money in the door, but it's opportunity in the future.
Michelle, that's actually a really good point about, subcontracting. When you all work with larger vendors, do you have diverse subcontracting requirements with them?
So our contracts do not set anything beyond workforce goals. What we have been doing is collecting DEI plans and trying to get to a point where we can understand the value and the quality in those one to another. That said, there's a lot of workforce development requirements that we know doesn't get at what we're trying to solve here. And so, we really do push our primes, and we, at a minimum, ask, even if they're not required, we still ask to get the conversation going to make sure that they know that we care. And as we build this program, our hope is to get there to do that level of compliance and control in the future. I do know that the city is engaged in a lot of that work. So as they start to kind of figure it out, we'll have the benefit of their learning.
Wonderful. A couple of questions have come through the chat, asking, my company does X. Are you currently buying for, or, do you have a current bid for that? For anyone who's kind of looking, I know you mentioned, going to your guys' website. Do you mind just reiterating, if someone's looking for when you potentially might be buying something, where they should go?
Sure. I think the best place for you to start would be the buying plan. That's that future looking, based on what we've budgeted and the demands going forward, the types of purchases we think we're going to be doing in the future. You could also look back, right, to see and try to search of, have we done procurements like this in the past? But we're a very fluid agency. We do a lot of kind of like big one-time procurements. So we have our bucket of recurring services and then a lot of one-times as well. Does that answer the question, Amber?
I think it does. I
Yeah.
just want to, just so that we're not going, I'm not asking like 5 times, like, oh, are you buying, cheesecake? Are you buying hats? Right? Like,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that everyone, it's relevant to everyone, right? Where they can go to
Yes.
to find where, you guys are currently buying or buying in the upcoming, 12 months, which brings me to my next question. Going back to that buying plan, January is right around the corner, which is a little bit scary, but also a great opportunity for people who are looking forward to, 2024. When do you guys release your buying plan so that people are giving themselves enough time to prepare?
Great. So our budget cycle runs from July until June. So we follow that traditional fiscal cycle. So I would say June, July, August is when you're going to have kind of like the most new information. We are right in the middle of our fiscal year. What we try to do though is we have a monthly process where our board will authorize contracts and give us the right to advertise as well. So our board posts their agenda on the Tuesday before the board meeting. So again, that's where you kind of get a sneak peek at what is the actual business that they're going to be taking up this week. Are they going to be awarding this bid? Are they going to be approving the advertisement of that one? So that's a great resource as well. But I think that then as we go through each month, we try to pull down, okay, well, we're requesting to advertise this. It's coming off of the buying plan. So if anything, it starts to shrink a bit as we start to pick off and procure. We won't really upload brand new information until we're doing our next budget. So it's fairly stable this time of year, and it's more in the summer and the fall that you might see kind of more changes to that buying plan.
Excellent. Thank you. Question about technical assistance providing. Do you all directly provide technical assistance, or do you outsource that to other organizations in Greater Boston?
So we are working on building our technical assistance arm. And I think that kind of our first pass at that is trying to understand who's already doing technical assistance, where are they, and what does that service look like? So I think at a minimum, what we're hoping to establish is being a referral source, kind of an intake, and getting to the point where, you know, we can say, gee, it seems like you're just starting out. Gee, you're a really developed business. Why don't you take a look at these items? Because the reality is there's a lot of technical assistance that gets provided that's necessary for small businesses, but might not be directly related with how to get a government contract. We want to make sure that we focus on the area where there is a gap, which is how to get a government contract. So the first thing we wanted to do was just confirm there's no one else out there that's really doing this, right? So we found a few partners, right? The state is like sort of has some models. And so now that we've kind of at least defined the universe, that's what we're really excited to share with folks today is here's the universe. Now we're going to work to kind of fill in the gaps. And so that's why Robert said, like, we're really looking for feedback and for questions, because we know that there's still a lot to learn and develop. And so I would say anybody that's on this call that has any questions could call Robert or me or Halsey, and we will provide technical assistance.
Wonderful. And if someone is a technical assistance provider and is looking to join your kind of database, your Airtable, how would they do that?
Robert, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so it would be reach out to me and let me know more about yourself, your practice. And yeah, we would, you know, if it's a real fit, we'd add you to the database.
Wonderful. I'd like to dive in a little bit about networking, because one thing we hear at Pace Setters all the time is that it's really relationship building that's going to lead to that contract. Can you guys talk a little bit about a diverse vendor you might have worked with that did that networking really well? What did that vendor do that made that networking so successful, and potentially share what that led to?
Robert, I'll let you take that one if you'd like.
You know, I'd say the only thing that was really coming to mind would have been Casablanca. So that would have been the case study where that was a vendor who was met a BPDA staff person at a public outreach event and actually started developing the relationship. So he was building a relationship with us to understand who we are, what our needs were, and then they were able to actually respond to things. And I would note the first proposal they responded to was not successful. But after that point, they did one based on their own kind of initiative, the fact that they were staying in communication with the agency, they were able to win an initial contract, and then that had just kind of grown from there, where everyone, the project managers who work with them, are really impressed by the quality of their work, and they're a business that they would not have otherwise reached out to had it not been for that networking. So networking is huge. It's letting you know, one, what do people, what services do people need? Who else is out there? And also think about networking from the component of on the development side. So it's partnering with other people. It's understanding, hey, maybe you're the GC, and maybe you would need to get paired up with someone who's like the equity provider. It's trying to build those partnerships to actually say, how can you do something that's in everyone's best interest?
Awesome. I love that story. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about that partnership, if you go to bostonchamber.com under news and insights, we have a whole blog write-up about that great partnership between the BPDA and Casablanca. Next question we have from the chat is, what certifications do you guys count as diverse certifications? So I know you talked about minority-owned, women-owned. What other diverse categories do you count within that DEI buying equity plan?
Really great question. So we have allowed ourselves to recognize self-determination, right? So even if you don't hold the certification, if you self-identify, we will internally, for our own purposes, right, we will track that. We do also consider veteran-owned, disabled, veteran-owned, LGBTQ. We've got more acronyms than I knew existed. So, you know, you don't need the certification to be recognized. What the certification does is just make you more visible. It helps us come and find you rather than you coming to all of our websites and filling out the form to like become a vendor. So that's what I would say about that.
And
Thank you.
one comment that at least brought up for me the importance of something like the disparity study. So if folks are interested, you can go onto the BPDA website and find a copy of the disparities study, where that looks at historical spending trends. I mean, although that was primarily focused on minority and women-owned businesses, but that's also something where that lays the foundation for the outreach efforts that we're doing. Also in terms of, yeah, I'm not going to go off on the legal stuff, but that's a document that folks may, it's worth looking at, or at least glancing at the executive summary.
Awesome. All right. Another question. Could you guys once again share what categories you guys buy from, or what are some of the bigger categories that you guys procure in?
Sure. So I would say our biggest categories: professional services, design, architecture, engineering services. Again, we own an extraordinary amount of marine infrastructure. And so there's a lot of design and construction associated with marine and maritime. We have a bucket of recurring services. So again, knowing that we own property, we buy snowplowing services, we buy landscaping and arborist services. And so that's maintenance as well. And then, you know, smaller buys around IT. But our big construction projects are where the core of our money is spent on wharfs, you know, road resurfacing, and environmental remediation is another really big category for us as well.
Great. Does working with another city department help if a vendor is also applying to work with the BPDA?
I think that definitely at least gives you a sense of the type of work and the structure and the public procuring process. But I think at the simplest form, when we're evaluating and awarding, we do ask for, do you have relevant experience? But if it comes down to everything's the same price and one of them already has a contract with the city, that's not relevant to us. But assuming that you perform well for another department and that they're a positive reference for you, then yes, I think that makes you more competitive when bidding on our contracts.
Digging a little bit more into the bidding process, once someone submits their bid, how much time should they expect to pass before getting a response from you all?
Wow, really great question. So I had mentioned before that we have an a monthly board process. And so for our large publicly procured projects, so everything over $50,000, we have to wait until there's authorization from our board in order to send the notice of intent. And so you'll notice that on a lot of our contracts, I believe that we reserve up to 45 days, I think, in order to make the actual determination. That said, smaller procurements, you know, and the unofficial lines of communication happen a little bit faster, right? So if we're just doing a solicitation, it's under $50,000, we turn around and is, you know, within hours of the responses, we would notify folks. So it depends on how big the process is, how long it takes for us. Advice though on how to speed up that process. If you find yourself being awarded a contract, get your attorneys looking at the documents way ahead of time. It is unfortunately very common for the project managers, the sales teams, the marketing folks to be like, all right, we're all good to go. And then we send them the copy of the contract and the whole process comes to a lurching stop because now they've got to go and consult their legal. Consult legal before putting your bid in. And we try to carry the a sample of the contract and we say, these are the terms that we want you to sign to. So you can go and talk to your legal counsel now. If there are concerns, raise them in your bid process. That's the best way to expedite the contracting process.
That's a great segue to my next question, which is, what are some of the common pitfalls you see when smaller businesses or diverse businesses are responding to RFPs?
Great question. I'd actually like to think about that a little bit. Robert, does something come to mind?
It's kind of the simple, but it's the completeness of the package. It's making sure that you've essentially you have the checklist of submitted materials. You've submitted everything that you're supposed to. That's one of the pitfalls where it's if there's something minor that's been omitted, that can folks may be able to request that, but generally it's that's something that jumps out to me is like folks don't necessarily follow the checklist.
Yeah, and I think the level of detail, right, of particularly in the RFP space and in technical proposals, I think smaller firms, it's just harder to put those packages together. We know that larger firms have staff that sit around all day and put bid packages together. And so, yeah, I think just to kind of reiterate Robert's comment is generally speaking, I think that our smaller firms tend to have kind of smaller, lighter proposals. And so, but I think that said, staff understands that, right? And sometimes there's actually like a value in going smaller, and that turns out to be more competitive than a bunch of glossy pictures that we know some intern put together for us. So
another question that came in, do you help companies with insurance requirements?
again, another really great question. We do try to make sure that we don't ask for any more insurance than we actually need. I think we spend secondarily from that, we spend a bit of time. This is where we are doing quite a bit of technical assistance, dispelling some misunderstandings about how hard it is to get insurance. Insurance companies love like big policies. And so usually it's cheaper the higher up you go. And so we spend a bit of time, particularly with our smaller and independent contractors, talking about like, actually just call up your insurance agent and ask them for this. And then we kind of like help through that process. There have been times where we have kind of like, for example, if we know that a consultant is never getting in a car, is never going near our employees, is never going in a public building, they don't need to have auto insurance. So, we do narrowly tailor each program and each requirement. And then as we sit down and go through our contracting, we are able to negotiate the terms of service. But I guess I'll close by saying it is also important to us that we help small and minority firms get the insurance that they need rather than this agency taking on the risk on their behalf. Because to Robert's point, once you get that coverage, you can then go and bid and bid and bid again. And so if you're really looking to grow and do business with us, that's a barrier that we want to help folks get over as opposed to actually push the barrier down, because everybody needs good coverage. Insurance is really important. So that's my advice on that.
Absolutely. Given many services are recurring, like landscaping and snow removal, how often are these contracts for the recurring services awarded to new suppliers versus incumbents? Do you recommend any additional ways to stand out versus an incumbent?
I guess I'll start, and then certainly I'm doing too much talking, Robert. So please jump in. But traditionally, we follow state guidance that we do not enter into an agreement longer than 3 years. We tend to do, a 3-year contract with 1 year guaranteed and then 2 one-year options. There are very limited circumstances where we might go out to 5 years, and some circumstances where we might do a 1 year. But typically for our recurring services, we know that we need that kind of longevity in order to get the services right and get everything flowing quickly. So that's where our buying plan comes in. That particularly on our recurring services, you'll be able to see when is the next one coming out. And I would say in recent past, given the work that Robert and this team has been doing, we have consistently been having more participation, and we've been awarding to newer, and we just simply have more firms now than we had in 2018 when we were doing our disparity study. So I think the basic answer to the question is yes, we switch providers frequently. And so, Robert, do you want to talk about how, when it comes to, I mean, I think we point back to like what Casablanca did, but do you want to talk a little bit about how firms can stand out when it comes to our recurring services?
Yeah, so to that end, I would direct folks to our procurement portal where you're able to see copies of what actually went out for bid the previous cycle. So you can look at the IFBs, like the invitation for bids. You can see what was requested of the incumbent, and then you could actually kind of back into, okay, what was the winning proposal? What did they pay? And did that make sense? So I'd say a benefit of a public sector entity is we're required to have a level of transparency that you wouldn't have at a private business necessarily. So you're able to go back, actually understand what did we ask for. You're able to go to our site and see, oh, who responded? What were the bids? And then sort of kind of understand and just pencil out, okay, are you able to come in at that price? If not, then that you might say, yeah, that may not be an opportunity for you. But if you are able to pencil things out, that's just a benefit. So I'd say use our site as a reference. And yeah, if there are questions about things, feel free to reach out. I mean, we'd provide as much help or just kind of clarification as possible.
And then, yeah, I guess I would just reiterate, go to the conference, go to the tours, show up to the site, meet the project manager, go to the office hours, ask the question and speak up. Because if you see something about the work, your fresh eyes, we've had times where we assumed it's really good. We're going to package these two things together and it's going to be so efficient. And then the vendors are like, that makes no sense. You're going to be paying a lot if you do that. So, you guys are our eyes and ears on the ground on how to do this work better in a more cost-effective way. So I think what contributed to Casablanca's success, I wouldn't want to speak for them, but their willingness to go through and practice and have a couple unsuccessful bids. It was still time well spent because now they have 3 contracts with us. So don't be afraid of the first failure. It's not a failure. You learn something, you build a muscle. So it's worth the time.
And I just want to reiterate, because I wrote it with stars on my sheet of paper, was to ask for the bidders debrief. That's huge, and not a lot of companies offer that. So to anyone on the call, if you have bid and didn't receive, please ask for that debrief, because that's incredibly valuable to understand how to win next time.
We haven't quite gotten to the level of staffing capacity where we can invite every bidder, but we try to tell our project managers, hey, if you see somebody that needs an extra talk, we will follow up and provide vendor relations. And yes, if you ask us, we are obligated to provide it. And there's like a whole agenda that the state outlines of exactly how to conduct a debrief. And it is very advantageous because it focuses specifically on your bid and how things could be better in the future. So even if you just put the bid in just so you can get the debrief, it's time well spent.
I apologize if I missed this in your presentation. Is there a fee to submit a response to an RFP?
No.
Okay.
No. That's fallen by the wayside, thankfully. We don't have to print them anymore. You can just download them free. So
great. Okay, so I'm gonna move on from there. With our last couple of minutes, someone asked, they said that, do you have any specific recommendations for a service disabled veteran-owned business? But I'll open that up to you. If you had advice to any diverse business, what would it be?
Robert, why don't you go first, and then I'll see if I can add.
So the advice would be, whatever service you provide, please, reach out. I mean, if you're certified, that's great. We most likely have you on our list. But if there are things, i.e., if you haven't gone through the public procurement process, again, I'd say the resources would be going to our procurement portal, understanding what the RFP or IFB looks like, and just going through things. I mean, that's pretty much the same advice I'd give to anyone, where it's like, take advantage of the fact that we are a public entity. We are required to be transparent. And, so that at least lets you know, okay, these are the expectations. This is where you stand. And, that's the first thing that really comes to mind from me.
Yeah, I guess I would say give yourself extra time. This is a long-term goal. This is not quick money. This is right. This is like, to Robert's point about putting an arm into your business that will be sustainable across long-term economic ups and downs. And so, you should anticipate that it's a learning and growing process in order to get that first contract. But by the time you get your contract, you are very likely to succeed and perform well, because it's kind of hard to get the contract in the first place, right? So, I think that once you kind of get, if you put the time and energy to get your foot in the door, you build your business very quickly. And so again, if we're looking at Casablanca as our example, right? They did the tour sites, they went to the bidders conference, they submitted a bid, they asked for the debrief, they submitted a bid again, they asked for the debrief again, and it was the third time around that they were finally the winning proposal. So it's just, you've got to commit. So that's what I would advise.
Robert and Michelle, thank you so much again for presenting today. And I'd like to thank you all who have joined us on the call today for tuning in for our Doing Business with the Boston Planning and Development Agency. I hope you will all be leaving this webinar with new insights on their supplier diversity program and procurement processes. We hope you will join us in 2024 for more Pacesetters events. To get updates on these events and other initiatives within the Economic Inclusion Department, you can sign up for our newsletter at bostonchamber.com. In the meantime, I want to highlight just a couple other opportunities that we have coming up at the Chamber. First, we have our final Women's Network event of the year with Jenny Holiday, president of Encore Boston Harbor Hotel, who is also another Pacesetter buyer. And that event will be on Wednesday, December 13th. Hear about the challenges and opportunities in the casino industry and Jenny's journey as the first woman to run a casino in Massachusetts. Secondly, registration is open for our 2024 Pinnacle Awards. The Pinnacle Awards are a highly anticipated celebration of the powerful women who are changing Greater Boston through leadership excellence in entrepreneurship, management, and lifetime achievement. This year's event will take place on Friday, January 6th, as we celebrate the 30th year of honoring Greater Boston's dynamic female leaders for their contributions to the workplace and their commitment to the community. You can find these events and all other opportunities by visiting bostonchamber.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Robert and Michelle for presenting today, and I hope you all have a happy and warm holiday season. See you all in 2024.